Okay, in this video we're going to do some metric conversions, but I want to spend a little time just getting comfortable with the different metric measures. A meter is the metric unit that is used to measure length. A gram is what is used to measure weight, and the liter is what is used to measure volume. Those are the three measures, standard measures that you need to know in the metric system. Everything else is just a portion or a multiple of one of those. And that's what makes the metric system really easy to work with. And the more global our country, all of our business becomes, the more we find that we need to do a lot of conversions. I've talked with a lot of welders that tell me that they end up getting blueprints, plans from that were really put together in another country, and everything's in metrics, and they have to do conversions, and that happens more and more often. And so the U.S. is one of the only countries, in fact, the only country that is sticking with the standard measures, and I think over the next several decades that's going to wane just because we are becoming more global. So once we get working with these, I think you're going to be scratching your head and wondering why in the world are we taking our time, because these are so much easier to deal with. But we kind of need to get comfortable with them. It's been, most of us aren't dealing with these all that often. So a meter is approximately, it's about 40 inches, but it's about the width of a doorway. And you wouldn't have to write my examples on here. If you think of something that's similar that you feel like you relate to a little bit better, then go for it. A centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. So if you think of 1/100th of that doorway, but that's a little harder to fathom. I have a metric ruler here, and I usually like to have students try to find something and measure something that they're familiar with and really get comfortable with it. So I'm measuring the width of my fingernail here. It's about 1 centimeter. The width of your cell phone. So I'm going to write fingernail or cell phone. Or cell phone width is a good measure of a centimeter. A millimeter is 1/10 of that centimeter, or 1,000th of a meter. And it's usually, the width of any coin would be a good example of that. Now, going on to a gram is a metric measure used to measure weight. Most of us would know our weight in kilograms if we were living in a metric country. But a gram is approximately, it would be close to 500 milligram, Advils or something like that. 2 little tablets. I've got 2 of them right here. That would be about a gram right there. Each of those are 500 milligrams. Together, they make 1,000 milligrams, which would give you 1 gram. Okay. A liter is, I think most of us can relate to a meter very easily because it's used to measure volume, and we've been buying sodas with liters for quite a long time. I think it's kind of interesting that the soft drink companies have gone to bottling in liters for decades now. And I think that's because they've been selling globally. Coca-Cola has been selling overseas for several decades, and I think bottling in terms of liters has come as a result of that. So getting used to the different measures in the metric system. We have kilo. I'm just going to read them down in order. Kilo, hecta, deca. The general unit, whatever it is. If you're measuring length, it's going to be meters. If you're measuring volume, it's going to be liters. And if it's weight, you're going to be using grams. So you use M, L, G to represent each of those. And then we have deci, centa, and milli. And for the most part, we deal with kilo quite often, the regular unit, and probably centa and milli. Those are just the ones that are most common at this point. So the abbreviations that you use for kilo are K, hecta is H, deca is DK, and then next is your milli, your meter, your liter, or your gram. Deci is with a D, C for centi, and M for milli. Okay, so that's just the abbreviations. Now, what do they all stand for? I think many of us know that kilo stands for 1,000 of whatever it is that we're dealing with. Hecta stands for 100. That comes from the English measure of hectare, is 100 by 100 measures, but I don't think anybody recognizes that. Deca is 10 of whatever our unit is. And then our middle item here is, you know, whether we're talking about meters, liters, or grams, just a single whole unit. Okay, the next measure down from that is deci, and that is 1/10. So you've got a fraction now, 1/10. And the centi is 1/100th, and the milli is 1,000th. So I'm kind of doing the double whammy there on the fraction, so you can see you've got a portion of a whole. So really, you're dealing with exponents. We'll get talking at some point. We're going to deal with scientific notation. You're going to see the pattern there with the exponents. We have positive powers and negative powers, but I'm kind of getting off track. What we want to stay focused on here is converting. Now, most textbooks are going to have you go back to the textbook to a conversion chart. I know that my conversion chart, the lower left, all of these are metric measures. You can use the unity fraction with that and work with these measures, or you can just kind of go what I'm going to show you right here, which is just moving the decimal. Here we're going to convert from 7.3 kilometers. That's 1,000 meters. That's a lot. Many of you would know that you would just multiply that, but what you can do is you can look up here and say, well, look, what measure am I going from and where am I going to? I'm going from kilometers all the way over here to meters. So that is 3 units to the right, which just means I have to move my decimal 3 units to the right. So I'm going to write my 7.3, but I'm not going to put my decimal in. I need to move my decimal 3 units to the right. 1, this is moving from kilo to hecta to deca and to my actual meter. So I would be putting in 2 zeros in there as placeholders. So 7.3 kilometers is equivalent to 7,300 meters. Okay, here we are dealing with centimeters, 6.2 centimeters, and we're going to meters. Now if you look up here, centimeters is over here, and we're going back to the left to meters. Centimeters are much smaller than meters, so 6.2 centimeters is going to be a portion of a meter. So we're going to move 2 decimal places back. So I'm going to write my 6 and my 2, but rather than putting my 0 in, I'm going to move 2 decimal places back. I have to insert a 0 in there. So 6.2 centimeters is equivalent to 62,000th of a meter. So it's a portion of a meter, just like we had estimated. Okay, here I'm going to go from 7.6 kilometers all the way over to millimeters. Well, kilometers are huge. I mean, that's 1,000 meters, and then each of those meters has 1,000 millimeters in it. So we're going to be moving, notice I got a big line here, a lot of decimal places. So I've got 7.6, but I'm not going to put the decimal in. I'm going up here and I'm looking at kilometers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right. So I'm going to take this decimal and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right, and I have to tuck in zeros here. Now I do want to caution you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the right. So we've got 5 zeros in here, and a lot of times students think, oh, 6 units to the right, 6 zeros. It's the place value. It's the units that you're moving is the number of place values you're moving. 6 is taking up one of those place values. So it's not a case of tucking in that number of zeros. You're moving your decimal that number of places. Okay, so here we've got millimeters, and we're going back to meters. Notice I've got this vice versa. So you're really having to think. We're not moving from meters to millimeters. We have our millimeter measure. We've got 5.8 millimeters, a little more than 5 coin thicknesses. And we're moving back to meters. This is going to be a small portion of a meter. Okay, so we're over here at meters, and that means we're going back, millimeters, and we're going back 1, 2, 3 units to the left. So I'm going to write my 5 and my 8, and I'm going to move 1, 2, 3. So notice I had to tuck in 2 zeros for placeholders. We did 3 place movements. Okay, here I have centimeters. I'm going to meters. It looks like it's vice versa though. I'm going from meters to centimeters. So I've got meters here and I'm going 2 places to the right to get to centimeters. So I'm going to put in my decimal was here after the 4, so I'm going to go 1, 2 places to the right. So there's 406 centimeters and 4 meters and 600ths of a meter. And that makes sense when we know that there's 100 centimeters per meter. Okay, over here we're going from 8.2 hectometers to decimeters. So that's just an odd one. So we're going to be going 1, 2, 3 places to the right. So I'm not going to put my decimal in. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 places to the right. I have to tuck in 2 of my zeros. Okay, a metric ton is 1,000 kilometers. So if you would look at this chart here, you know, we're multiplying by 10 as we go from right to left. Okay, so I just want you to know a metric ton is 3 units to the right of this, multiplying by 10. So that'd be 10 to the third. So that's going to be quite a huge movement here. So 4.2 metric tons, that's 3 units out to the left. I know that I'm way off here, but 3 units out to the left. So it means I'm going to be moving my decimal 1, 2, 3 units. I have to tuck in a 0. So 4.12 metric tons is 4,120 kilograms. Okay. Okay, moving. I want to make sure that I'm on the screen here. Moving down here, I've got 400th of a kilogram. So we're way up here. 400th of a kilogram. We're moving all the way over to the right to milligrams. You just barely get everything on this screen. So that means I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units of movement here. So I'm going to write my 0 and my 4, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got to write them kind of small to get them on there. But you want to put your little spaces in there so that you make sure you get enough placeholders, but that'd be equal to 40,000 milligrams. Here I have 2,900 milliliters way back here, and I need to move over here to figure out how many liters. So I'm over here, I need to move 1, 2, 3 place values to the left. So there's an implied decimal back here. If I write my 2900 here, there's an implied decimal. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. So that would be equivalent to 2.9 liters. Here I have 2.5 liters, and I'm moving to centiliters. So liters and centiliters, they're just 2 place values from each other, but I'm starting here at liters. I'm going to the right to get to centiliters. So I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. So that would be 250 centiliters. Here we have 7.8 grams. Grams is in our center, and we're going to the milligrams. That's 3 units to the right. So I'm going to have to go 1, 2, 3, and I have to tuck in 0, so that'd be equivalent to 7,800 milligrams.